The cold wind cut against Ethan's skin as he ran through the woods, gripping his little sister's tiny hand. Lily was only 6, but her eyes had already seen too much sorrow. Behind them, flames swallowed their home, devouring the last remnants of their parents. "Don't let go of my hand, Lily!" Ethan shouted, pulling her away from the burning house. The little girl was too scared to speak. Her chest tightened with fear, but the firm grip of Ethan's hand gave her strength. He was always there to protect her. That night would never leave their memories. From that moment on, Ethan became everything to Lily, her brother, her protector, her best friend, and most of all, the only family she had left. He grew up too fast, taking on responsibilities no teenager should. He worked odd jobs, made sure there was food on the table, and did everything he could to shield Lily from the harsh realities of life. "You're my hero, Ethan," she would say every time he fixed something around the house or brought food home after a long day of work. "And you're my reason to keep going," he always replied, ruffling her hair with a soft smile. But deep down, Ethan knew he couldn't protect her forever. The world was cruel, and no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't guarantee he would always be there. As soon as he turned 18, he started thinking about their future. That's when he made the decision that would change everything. He would enlist in the army. Lily was 12 when he told her. Tears filled her eyes before Ethan could even finish his sentence. "No, you promised you'd never leave me." Her voice broke. Ethan held her shoulders gently, trying to force a reassuring smile, though the weight of his decision pressed heavily on his chest. "I have to do this, Lily. It's the best way to build a future for both of us." She shook her head, sobbing. "You said we'd always be together. What if something happens to you?" He wiped her tears with his thumbs, looking into her eyes. "I will come back. I always come back for you." And just like that, the promise was made. A promise Ethan believed could never be broken. But war doesn't care about promises. The day Ethan left felt like a funeral. Lily stood on the front porch, arms wrapped around herself as she watched her brother adjust his backpack. He was wearing the Army's basic training uniform, stiff, unfamiliar, and nothing like the brother she had always known. His face was serious, but his hands trembled slightly as he tightened the straps of his bag. She wanted to say something, anything that would make him stay, but all she could do was stare at him. Her throat locked in a silent scream. Ethan finally turned to her, his expression softening. "Hey, don't give me that look," he said with a forced smile. "It's not forever, Lily. I'll be back before you know it." Her eyes were already brimming with tears. "You're lying." Ethan sighed. He hated this, hated leaving her. "I promise, Lily, I will come back." He knelt down, holding her hands in his. "I always come back for you." But his words weren't enough. Lily shook her head furiously, gripping his hands tighter. "I don't want promises. I want you to stay. You're all I have, Ethan. If you leave, I'll be alone." Her sobs broke something inside him. He swallowed hard, pushing back the lump in his throat. He couldn't cry. He had to be strong for her. "You will never be alone," he said firmly, squeezing her hands. "You hear me? No matter what happens, I will always come back to you." Lily sniffled, looking up at him with desperate, pleading eyes. "You promise?" Ethan cupped her face gently. "I promise." The bus arrived. A long, hollow honk echoed through the air, cutting through the fragile moment between them. Ethan stood up, his movement slow, reluctant. Lily grabbed his sleeve at the last second. "Don't go." But he pulled away. "I have to." Then he turned and walked toward the bus. Each step felt like 1,000 knives to his chest, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. Lily stood frozen on the porch, watching as the bus swallowed her brother. As it drove away, she felt something inside her crack open, an emptiness she had never known before. And then she was alone. Lily tried to be strong. At first, she convinced herself that it wouldn't be so bad. Ethan would write. He would call. The weeks would pass, and soon he'd be home again. She counted down the days, marking each one on the calendar with a small X. But as the weeks stretched into months, the silence grew louder. Ethan's letters came at first, brief, but full of reassurance. He told her about boot camp, how tough it was, how much he missed home. He always ended with the same line, "I'll be back before you know it." Then the letters became less frequent. The calls became shorter. And one day, they stopped altogether. Lily sat by the phone every night, waiting for it to ring. Sometimes she dialed Ethan's number just to hear the automated message tell her the call couldn't go through. She told herself he was just busy, that he would call soon. But doubt crept in like a shadow, whispering the one thought she refused to say out loud. What if he doesn't come back? At school, she drifted through the halls like a ghost, barely speaking. Her teachers noticed, so did her friends, but no one could understand. How could they? None of them knew what it was like to wake up every day, wondering if the only person in the world who truly cared about you was still alive. The world felt colder without Ethan in it. The house felt emptier. One night, she sat on her bed, clutching the last letter he had sent. His handwriting was rushed, a little messy. Nothing like the careful letters he used to write. "Lily, things are getting a little crazy out here, but I don't want you to worry. I'll be fine. I always come back for you." Lily traced those words with her fingers, her chest tightening. Then she looked at the calendar. 2 months since his last letter, 3 months since his last call. Something was wrong. The silence became unbearable. Lily told herself over and over that there had to be an explanation. Maybe Ethan was in a place where he couldn't write. Maybe his unit had moved. Maybe, but the truth clawed at the edges of her mind. Ethan would never go this long without contacting her. Something had happened. And then, one afternoon, the confirmation came. Lily was at home, curled up on the couch, flipping through an old photo album. Pictures of her and Ethan stared back at her. Ethan teaching her how to ride a bike. Ethan holding her on his shoulders at a fair. Ethan promising he'd always protect her. A knock on the door made her jump. She wasn't expecting anyone. Heart pounding, she walked to the door and opened it. 2 men in military uniform stood on the porch. For a moment, all she could do was stare at them. The sight of the army insignia on their jackets made her stomach twist. One of the men, an older officer with tired eyes, spoke first. "Lily Carter." Her breath hitched. "Yes?" The man took a deep breath before continuing. "We regret to inform you that your brother, Sergeant Ethan Carter, has been reported missing in action." Lily felt the words like a physical blow to her chest. The air vanished from her lungs. The room tilted, "missing in action." The phrase echoed in her head, repeating like a broken record. Not dead, not alive, just gone. The officer kept talking, but she barely heard him. His unit was ambushed. "Search efforts are ongoing. We'll notify you if there are any updates." The words blurred together. The men handed her a folder with official documents, but she couldn't bring herself to take it. Her fingers trembled, her mind screaming for them to take it back. To take back everything they had just said. This couldn't be real. Ethan had promised. He said he'd come back. And now, he was gone. The officers left after a few minutes, offering empty words of sympathy. Lily barely noticed when the door closed. Her body felt frozen, her mind stuck in that moment, in those 3 horrible words, missing in action. And for the first time in her life, she truly felt like she had lost everything. Lily refused to believe it. For days, she sat in front of the television, flipping through news channels, hoping, praying for any mention of Ethan's unit. She searched online, trying to find reports about the ambush, desperate for any shred of information. But the official military updates were vague, filled with words like ongoing investigation and no further details at this time. It wasn't enough. None of it was enough, because deep down she knew the truth. Ethan wasn't dead. She felt it in her bones. It wasn't wishful thinking. It wasn't denial. It was something stronger, deeper, something she couldn't explain. She wasn't going to just sit there and accept it. She started reaching out to people, Ethan's friends, anyone who might know something. Some had heard about the ambush, but none of them knew what had really happened to him. Until one night, when her phone buzzed with a message from Miles Turner. Miles had served with Ethan since boot camp. He was one of the few soldiers Ethan had ever talked about. Her hands shook as she read the message. Miles, Lily, I don't know if I should be telling you this, but I need you to hear it from me before you hear it from someone else. I have a voicemail from Ethan. He sent it the night before he disappeared. Lily's heart nearly stopped. A voicemail, Ethan's last words. Her fingers moved before she could think. Lily, send it to me, please. A minute later, an audio file popped up on her screen. She hesitated. Her thumb hovered over the play button. What if it was something terrible? What if he had known he wasn't coming back? No, she had to hear it. Taking a shaky breath, she pressed play. Ethan's voice filled the room. Lily, if anything happens to me, you have to remember our promise. Never give up on me, no matter what. Then the message cut off. Lily stared at the screen, her pulse hammering. Ethan knew. Something had happened to him, but he wanted her to keep fighting. She clenched her fists, her jaw tightening with determination. If Ethan wasn't giving up, then neither was she. Lily replayed the voicemail over and over. Never give up on me, no matter what. Ethan's voice was firm, but there was something else beneath it, something she hadn't noticed the first time. Fear. He had known something was coming. But what? She called Miles immediately. He picked up on the first ring. Lily, I shouldn't have sent that. If the army finds out, Miles, stop. Her voice was sharp. Tell me the truth. What happened to Ethan? A long silence stretched between them. When Miles finally spoke, his voice was quiet. We were sent on a recon mission. It was supposed to be simple. Get in, gather intel, get out. He exhaled shakily, but we walked right into an ambush. Lily's grip on the phone tightened. Ethan and I got separated from the rest of the team. We tried to make it back, but Miles hesitated. He told me to run. He stayed behind to cover me. Her heart clenched. And then I heard gunfire. A pause. When we went back to look for him, he was gone. Lily closed her eyes. Gone. That was all they had. No body, no proof, just gone. The army stopped looking for him, didn't they? She asked bitterly. Miles didn't answer. He didn't have to. Lily took a deep breath. I'm going to find him. Miles let out a dry laugh. Lily, this isn't a movie. You can't just... I don't care. Her voice was steady. He's alive, Miles. I know he is. Miles sighed. I don't know what you think you can do. Lily's hands curled into fists. I'm going to find someone who can help me. She hung up before he could argue. For the first time in months, she felt alive, because now she had a mission, and she wasn't going to stop until she found Ethan. Lily had no idea where to start. How was she supposed to find someone the army had already given up on? She spent days combing through military reports, news articles, anything that mentioned Ethan's unit. But everything she found said the same thing. His unit was ambushed. He went missing, and search efforts were inconclusive. It wasn't enough. She needed more. And then she found it. A name buried deep in an old article. Logan Reed. A former Army intelligence officer who had been dishonorably discharged years ago. The article didn't say why, only that he had been involved in unauthorized recovery missions. Lily's pulse quickened. Unauthorized recovery missions. This was her guy. She spent the next week tracking him down. He was off the grid, no social media, no phone number, nothing. But with enough persistence and a little hacking help from a friend, she finally got an address. A rundown bar on the outskirts of Chicago. She didn't hesitate. The place was dimly lit, the air thick with cigarette smoke. Lily pushed past a group of drunk men and scanned the room. And then she saw him. Logan Reed sat in the back, a whiskey glass in his hand. He was in his 40s, rugged, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. A long scar ran from his eyebrow to his jawline. He looked like a man who had seen too much. Lily marched straight up to his table. "I need your help." Logan didn't even glance up. "I don't do that anymore." She pulled out her phone and hit play. Ethan's voice filled the air. "Lily, if anything happens to me, you have to remember our promise. Never give up on me, no matter what." Logan finally looked at her. Lily met his gaze, unflinching. "I know he's alive, and I'm going to find him, with or without you." A long silence stretched between them. Then slowly, Logan smirked. "You've got guts, kid." He downed the rest of his whiskey and stood. "Let's find your brother." Lily wasn't sure what she had expected from Logan Reed, but it wasn't this. The man was ruthless. From the moment he agreed to help, he moved fast. Within a day, he had an entire wall in his small apartment covered in maps, classified documents, and scribbled notes. Red string connected locations, names, and theories, like a chaotic puzzle only he could understand. Lily stood in front of it, trying to process everything. "How did you get all this?" she asked. Logan smirked, lighting a cigarette. "I know people." He flicked at one of the maps. Ethan's unit was ambushed near the Kunar province in Afghanistan. Official reports say he was likely killed or taken by insurgents. He turned to her. "But I don't buy it." Lily's stomach tightened. "Why?" Logan grabbed a folder off the table and tossed it in front of her. Because there's a pattern." She opened it and froze. Inside were 6 other cases, soldiers who had been declared missing in action under similar circumstances. "These aren't random disappearances, kid. Something's going on." Logan exhaled smoke. "And I think your brother got caught in the middle of it." Lily's hands shook as she flipped through the files. "Then where is he?" Logan leaned in. "That's what we're going to find out." The next few days were a blur. Logan had connections, people who owed him favors, people willing to talk. Slowly, pieces of the puzzle started to come together. Ethan hadn't been killed. He had been taken, and not by random insurgents, by someone else. Lily's head spun as Logan explained. "There are rumors about a black site prison run off the books, a place where soldiers who know too much disappear." Lily's heart pounded. "And you think Ethan's there?" Logan met her gaze. "I think it's our best shot." Lily swallowed hard. She had started this journey hoping for answers. Now she had something more, a mission. She wasn't just looking for Ethan anymore. She was going to bring him home. Lily had never felt fear like this before. She sat in the passenger seat of Logan's beat-up truck as they drove down a deserted highway, the city lights fading behind them. The weight of what they were about to do pressed down on her chest. They weren't just looking for Ethan anymore. They were breaking into a black site prison, a place that technically didn't exist. Logan had spent the last 3 days gathering intel, tracking flight records, and speaking in hushed tones with people who operated in the shadows. Everything pointed to one location, a heavily guarded compound in the middle of nowhere. And if Ethan was inside, they had one shot to get him out. Lily's hands clenched in her lap as she tried to steady her breathing. Logan glanced at her. "You can still walk away, kid." She shook her head. "No, I'm seeing this through." He smirked. "Didn't think you'd back out, but once we go in, there's no turning back." Lily swallowed hard. "I know." She had spent 2 years waiting, 2 years hoping. Now she was done waiting. She was going to bring Ethan home. The facility loomed ahead, hidden deep in the mountains. It wasn't massive, but it was surrounded by high fences, security cameras, and armed guards. Getting in wouldn't be easy. Logan parked a mile away, pulling a duffel bag from the back seat. He tossed Lily an earpiece and a small pistol. "Stick close. Do exactly what I say." Lily's hands trembled as she checked the weapon. She had never held a gun before. Logan noticed. You don't have to go in, you know. I can do this alone. Lily tightened her grip on the gun. No, I'm not leaving him behind. Logan studied her for a moment, then nodded. All right, kid, let's get your brother back. They moved fast. Logan disabled the perimeter alarms, guiding Lily through the fence under the cover of darkness. Every step was calculated. Every breath felt like it could give them away. Then, after what felt like an eternity, they were inside. The hallways were cold and sterile, the sound of distant footsteps echoing. Logan led the way, navigating through the building with practiced precision. And then, a voice crackled through Lily's earpiece. Sector C, third cell on the left. Lily's heart nearly stopped. It was one of Logan's contacts, feeding them real-time intel. And if he was right, Ethan was here. Lily's pulse thundered in her ears as she sprinted down the hallway, Logan right behind her. Sector C, third cell on the left. The door was thick steel, secured with an electronic lock. There was no window, just a heavy silence behind it. Lily's hands shook as she turned to Logan. Open it! Logan pulled out a small device, attaching it to the keypad. A red light blinked rapidly as he worked to override the system. Lily's heart pounded. Please let him be in there, please. The lock beeped. The light turned green. Logan pushed the door open, and there he was. Ethan. Lily's breath caught in her throat. He was sitting against the wall, his wrists bound, his face covered in bruises and dirt. His once strong frame was thinner, his eyes hollow with exhaustion. For a moment, he didn't even react. He just stared at her like she was a ghost. Ethan. Lily's voice cracked, his eyes widened. Lily! She ran to him, falling to her knees, her hands grasping his face, his shoulders, any proof that he was real. I found you, she whispered, tears blurring her vision. I told you I would. Ethan's breath shuddered. Then, for the first time in 2 years, he let himself believe it. He was going home. The escape was chaos. Alarms blared. Guards swarmed the corridors. Logan fired at them as they ran, his voice sharp through Lily's earpiece. Move! Ethan, weak but determined, leaned on Lily as they ran. Every step was agony, but he never let go of her. They reached the exit, the night air hitting them like a shock. Logan's truck was parked just beyond the fence. Almost there. Then, a gunshot. Lily gasped as Ethan collapsed against her. No, 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 no! She dragged him forward, her body screaming in panic. Stay with me, Ethan. Just a little more. Logan reached them, hauling Ethan into the truck. Lily jumped in after him as bullets tore through the night. Then, tires screeched, and they were gone. Ethan faded in and out of consciousness, but Lily never let go of his hand. They didn't stop until they were far away, hidden in a safe house. Logan patched Ethan up, shaking his head. Hell of a reunion. Lily didn't laugh. She just sat beside Ethan, holding his hand. I told you, she murmured, I'd never give up on you. Ethan's fingers tightened around hers. His voice was hoarse, but strong. And I told you. He met her eyes. I always come back for you. And this time he had. This time the promise had been kept.